I am very happy to be here this morning. Anytime I have the opportunity to come home, and I do consider this my home, even though I've been gone since 1988, much to my parents' dismay. I went down to Florida to the University of Central Florida on a water ski scholarship. And once I got there, I had a boat, but I needed a place to ski. So there's this really cute guy that you saw up on the video earlier named Tim Johnson, and he had a lake, but he didn't have a boat, and I had a boat and didn't have a lake. So we used each other, and it was a match made in heaven. And we met in 1990, and for me, and I think for him, it was love at first sight. We started dating, and within 4.5 years, we were married. We ended up moving to Gainesville area, it's North Florida, attended the University of Florida, and we thought we would leave there as soon as we would finish from law school because it was a very, very small town. But God had other plans, and we have been there now since 1994. And it's been interesting. God got us in a place where it was very isolated. There's one stoplight. If you want to go to a restaurant, a real restaurant, you've got to go about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. And so He got us in a place where we were very, very isolated. We would still travel and compete, but once we got home, it was just the two of us, and that was the Lord. And it was really the best thing for us because as much as I move about and love to do and love to please and different things, when we got to a place where it was just us, we started to really dive into the Word of God. And we began to get our life just really grounded on His truth. And that was really the change in my life, was when I got kind of isolated and I began to look for the Lord. And I had grown up in a Christian church, in a Christian family, and had been to church since I was born. I had faithful parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins. Everybody knew the Lord. And it was, you just went to church. It was what was expected. But I knew about the Lord. I had accepted Him as my Savior. But I'm just going to be honest with you. I was not in love with Jesus. I was in love with water skiing. I was in love with traveling the world. I was in love with people-pleasing, having a successful career. And it wasn't about me going out there and being great in the world's eyes. I wanted to be, I guess, great in God's eyes, and I wanted to be great in my own eyes because I'm my worst critic. And I'm very tough on myself and very driven. And so, those were the priorities of my life. And for me, it took going through some pretty trying medical things for me to get my eyes off skiing and get them on the Lord. And I do not believe for a minute that God sends sickness. And I mean, think about it. If you had your kid here, you wouldn't go burn their hand, or you wouldn't cause them to be very sick to teach them a lesson. But you do allow your children to go through things to learn. And God allowed me to go through many things with our adoption experience, which was not very pleasant. If anyone's ever adopted before, it was quite a process. With my medical things, that was quite a process as well. I love in the Bible, if I can find it real quick, in Job, Job went through some things. But I love at the very end, in Job 42, he says, he kind of sums up his whole life, and he says, for many years I was talking about things I didn't know anything about, things far too wonderful for me. I had only heard about you before, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. I take everything back that I've ever said. And that was kind of my life. Everything that I knew about God was from what I'd always heard. And Job here, I think, saying, you know what, I had only heard about you before. I thought I knew you, but once I went through all of those things, I know you now. And that's been the testimony of my life. When I stepped out to follow God, I say when I finally got off the dock, I got off the dock every single day and said, hit it to my boat driver, which was my brother Michael for many, many years. I got up every day and said, hit it, hit it, hit it, let's go. But for many years, I never said hit it to God. I was quite comfortable on my dock. I said, it's like a skier that's hooked up to the power source, the boat. You've got to have that boat. But once you're all hooked up, you've got the rope, you can jump in the water with the best equipment, but if you don't say hit it, you're not going anywhere. And that was me as a Christian. I believed in the power of the boat, God. And I always say Jesus is like the rope. He says that he sent his son and he bridged the gap between him and us, sinful man, through the blood of his son Jesus Christ. So it's like he threw out this lifeline, this rope, and I picked it up because I believed with everything in me that Jesus Christ had died on the cross for my sin. I had the Holy Spirit living within me, which gives you the power. That's your best equipment right there. He gives you the strength, the power, the ability to do anything and to face anything and according to God's will. But I never said the words, hit it, God, until I was in my early 20s, until I got to that isolated place. And really, my husband, I didn't have anything else except for the Lord. And going through those surgeries and stuff, like Job, I began to really get to know God. And I'm so thankful for everything that I've ever been through. I'm so thankful for the journey that he's taken me on. It hasn't always been easy. I have to laugh when I think back to my water ski career. We loved calm water. We started skiing on the Pamlico River down in Bath, North Carolina. I forget about you guys over here. I get looking over here. Y'all are spread out. But we skied on the Pamlico River, and we would go into these back creeks because that's where it was the most calm. It was only us and the rattlesnake or the moccasins, you know, because it was so shallow, it was so overgrown. Nobody went back there except for us because we had an inboard boat. And when that got windy, man, we would drive for 30, 40 minutes across the river through all this rough water to find any cove that we could that would be calm water. And eventually, my father and my mother, they built us our own lake because, you know, we really wanted some calm water. We wanted to have a place where I could train without the interruptions of the wind and the boat. But you know what? Everywhere you always would go, the wind would find you. The waves would find you. At our private lake, eventually the shoreline that was so beautifully landscaped eventually eroded and caused waves. I don't know, I think I mentioned this to them, but when I was a little girl, you know, I had a lake. I really didn't understand how fortunate I was. I thought everybody had a lake in their backyard. But I used to dream that he could build a dome over that lake. And when it was raining, he could shut the door. And you know, I think I invented the super domes in my mind as a young girl. And then if it was nasty, you know, you keep it closed. If it was pretty out, you just open it up and we could have the sunshine, you know, shining ever so brightly. But you know what? If my dad had built me a dome, I never would have been a world champion. I never would have understood what victory is because it was having victory in the rough stuff that made the journey so incredible. I had a little girl one time at one of our Innis Wakes events. That's where we work with all the at-risk youth. And right before we took off, she's laying on this tube and she said, "No bumps, Miss Kristi. I don't want any bumps." You know, and I'm looking out at this lake with the wind. We have 5 boats out there. She's going to have some bumps. And I looked and I said, "Baby, I can't promise you no bumps, but I can promise you I can get you over them." And that's been my journey with the Lord. There have been bumps. There's been 15 surgeries, and, you know, I don't want to claim anything, but the way things are going, who knows what tomorrow holds. You know, there's been adoption delays. Every day there's chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and Lyme disease and things that I deal with on a daily basis. But you know what? Like Job, I can say, I know the grace of God, and it is so sufficient for us. And when you push through and you wake up every morning and you say, "Hit it, God," which that is really all he's looking for. He's not looking for someone who never falls. I fell every single day as a water skier. But because I got up and said, "Hit it," over and over again, I became a world champion. David was a man after God's own heart. But David fell many times. But David rose up, repented of his sin, and said, "Hit it, God," again and again. And when we do that, God takes you on a journey you cannot ever imagine. I was so afraid to go with God. I wanted salvation. I didn't want to go to hell. I don't know anybody that would choose hell. But I didn't trust him as my Lord and Savior. I thought if I surrender to God, and I grew up in a Baptist church, and we would sing, I surrender all. If I surrendered all, I just knew He would take away my skiing, that He would take away everything that meant anything to me, that I would have to go live in a hut in Africa somewhere. I remember being at Greenville Christian Academy, and the missionaries would come, and they would tell us about the conditions that they lived in. I didn't want to give up all of that. You know, I was afraid. And so I think about what kept me on the dock, and I think keeps most Christians on the dock, is that they're afraid. They're afraid of where God's going to take them. They're afraid of what He's going to ask them to give up. I was afraid of what people would think of me, if my friends would laugh at me, think I was some Jesus freak or something. And what I didn't realize is that the things that I was holding on to were the very things that were keeping me from moving forward. About a month ago, we finished up our In His Wake season, and there was a young girl there who was petrified of water. Most of the kids, probably 80% of the kids we work with, have never even been in the water. And so and that's why it's such an incredible program, because they're so overwhelmed with fear, and we tell them victory only comes when you get off the dock, both in life and spiritually speaking. And so this young girl got out of the boat. She told me over and over again she couldn't swim. But you know what? She didn't have to swim to be able to ski. We have life vests. We have all this equipment that can help her get up. And she clung to the side of the boat. We have claw marks down the side of our boat. I'm not kidding. And so she had just clung to the boat, and she's yelling at me, and I'm just saying, calm down and listen. And finally, I worked her way out to the boom, which is on the side of the boat. She had both arms wrapped around and just pulling herself out of the water. And I thought of the irony of this. She thought that boat was saving her. She thought being on that pole, she was hanging on to everything, thinking that's what was going to keep her safe. And it was the very thing that was keeping her from moving forward. And I started thinking about in life, we're so afraid to trust God, to just, I'm just looking at her. I wasn't going to throw her out in the middle of the lake and say, figure it out on your own. I was going to help her every step of the way, and I had equipment and people lined up to help her every step of the way. And as I got her out there, and finally she trusted me, and we got up the first time. And for me, spiritually, that was a picture of me. I was hanging on to everything that I thought I needed to be happy. I was hanging on to my ski success, not realizing that God wanted to use the very thing that He had gifted me doing, skiing, to be used for His glory. I was hanging on, this is mine, this is mine. I was so afraid if I stood up and actually, I would stand up at a tournament and say, I want to thank God for the win, and I had a little fish sticker on my ski, but I would never share with someone how they could know the one I gave thanks to. I was afraid. I was so afraid, again, of where He would send me. And if you hang on to things, you can't receive things from the Lord. And it's only when we let go of that boat, that whatever, and you don't want to let go of God, the boat, but so switch from that analogy. But when you're hanging on to their fear, you're hanging on to all your what ifs and all that kind of stuff, that keeps you on the sidelines, that keeps you on the dock, and that keeps you from moving forward. And so when I finally got to a place where I was able to just surrender those fears and trust God with my life, He radically changed my life. And I wanted to share just a few things with you this morning of what I've learned in my journey with the Lord. It started really in 2002 when the Lord really challenged me to get off my dock, to say, hit it to Him, to leave the fear behind. And I tell you, fear comes up every day. I don't care where you are with the Lord. Satan's going to send fear because he uses fear, insecurities, all those things to keep you on the dock. You're going to think, I can't do that. That's exactly who God's looking for. It's someone who can't do it because He wants to show you that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. He picked Moses to be a mouthpiece for Him. Moses was a stutterer. I just find that so ironic. So the very thing you think you can't do is a most wonderful opportunity for God to show you that He can. And that's what I've seen over the last 10 years of my life of following and stepping out in ministry. The first thing that I have learned is that God will never, ever fail you. And He's faithful. when he has put something on your heart to do, which he has, Nehemiah 2:12 says, I love it, Nehemiah's talking about what the Lord had put on his heart to do. I believe he's placed inside of every single person sitting here some kind of passion, some kind of desire, some kind of gift, and those are the things that we use for the Lord. And when you step out with him and you start moving everything else. That's in Romans 8:31, and it talks about if God is for you, who can ever be against you? Since he did not spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, won't he give you everything else that you need? And so we refuse to say, hit it, God, and to step out with God because we're afraid we're not going to have the resources. We're afraid we're not going to have the know-how and the talents and the opportunities and the people to help you. And you know what? When I read that verse and I realized if he gave us what was most precious to him, won't he give us everything else? And he will. As I look back over the last 10 years of my life, he has met me at every crossroad of the journey. He has brought people. I've never even had to go out and raise the money. He's brought it to me. And our bank account's about it, and y'all can probably, most ministries can nod with this. Every couple of weeks, we're back down to zero. And we're just looking at it and we're going, okay, God, you've got to show up. And he never, ever fails us. If I had waited, it's a journey of faith. I love it when he was leading the Israelites. He said, I'm going to take you to a land that is this promised land. It's flowing with milk and honey, but you're going to have houses that you didn't build. You're going to have crops that you didn't plant. He's saying you're going to have everything you need, and you didn't even have to do it. And that's what it's been like on this journey with him. When I totally surrendered and I began to step out with him, he has given me everything and everybody and every opportunity. He just keeps bringing people into our past. I don't have to do it. In fact, when I start to do it, it's when I start getting in trouble. You ever seen a skier get in front of the boat? You don't ski very long that way. I've tried to ski ahead of them, and eventually you sink because the power source is what's got to be leading you. And, for many years, I tried to drive the boat and ski at the same time, spiritually speaking. I was sitting on the dock one day when I stepped out of ministry, and I said, God, what is wrong with me? I'm exhausted. And he gave me this picture of me driving the boat with my leg out. He says, you're trying to control everything. Let me drive, and you just get behind me and follow. And when I've done that, and when I've fought the urge to get ahead of them or grab the controls, and as a type A person, I'm ready to make some things happen. I've seen the vision of what God's going to do in this ministry, and even in my children's lives as I've prayed, I've seen it. I've felt his spirit whispered in my heart. So I'm ready to make it happen. And, it's waiting for God to unfold everything and resisting the urge to manipulate things and to, make those little phone calls to make things happen. And when I do that, I see God do something so amazing. And it's always abundantly more than I could ever hope for or imagine. So I want to encourage you this morning that he will never fail you. He will give you everything that you need, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your personal finances, whether it's in your ministry, whatever it is. If you are following him with your whole heart. And there's been times when, I'm looking through here and I'm like, Lord, I know the answers to life are in here. This is our key to life. But it doesn't always tell you where to live. Doesn't always tell you where to hold your events or how fast to expand your ministry or whether to, spend the money on this. And that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. He guides you. And you're led by the words of the Lord that are written here and also by the Spirit that's within you. And he'll nudge you in these different directions. And time again, when I've stepped out and I haven't known which way to go, what I've learned is I'm always afraid I'm going to make a mistake. I don't want to step forward because what if I'm going in the wrong direction? And so sometimes we'll just get frozen in these positions. And what I've learned from the Lord and in my walk with him is if your heart is right with him and your heart is to seek him and to love him, you may make a few mistakes, but overall, he says, if you acknowledge me, I will direct your footsteps. And so often I'm like, Lord, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to screw up. And I have put so much pressure on myself not to mess up his plan. And that's pretty arrogant when you think about it. How could I mess up God's plan? If my heart is for him and I'm acknowledging him, it says that he will direct my footsteps and that his word will be a light, a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I love that verse because sometimes you can't see the whole path. But the lamp, you can see enough to take one step, then another step, then another step. And when you look back, and that's been the testimony of our ministry, I didn't know how all this was going to happen 10 years ago. I never would have dreamed we'd have a magazine, books, traveling all over the world. I would have never imagined how it could have happened. But little by little, God has made it possible. And he's never, ever failed me. He's never left me in the middle of the lake, told me to figure it out on my own. I love it at our ministry when those buses get there and those at-risk youth, those kids from the abuse shelters and different places, they start filing off that bus. We have somebody there to help them get off the bus, that leads them to registration, that leads them to put their vest on, then separates them in the groups, gives them instructions. And then you know what? If they don't know how to get in the water, we grab their hand and we walk them step by step. And everybody's at a little bit different level, but in the end, they all have victory if they'll get off the dock. And that's how it is with God. If we will get off the dock with him, he's got somebody waiting for you at every step of the way to meet you at your level of faith. You might just be sitting on the bus right now, just afraid to even get off. He's got someone there. That's why relationships are so important in the family of God. There's someone to encourage you, to get you to that next level. His word and his spirit will encourage you. You just keep stepping forward. And I love it in Habakkuk 3:17. It says that he gives us hind feet that we can tread upon the heights. And a hind goat was a goat that could stand on these steep, rocky places and continue to move up the mountain. And that's how it is with God. No matter how many bumps you have, no matter how many obstacles are coming, if you're following him and you're willing to get up every day and say, hit it, God, he's going to lead you step by step. He's going to have someone at every point of the journey to take you to that next level. But it starts with getting off. Everybody starts somewhere. And everybody moves forward a little bit every day. I think being a Christian is kind of like a Krispy Kreme donut conveyor belt. And you're headed to the glaze of glory. You know, we're all this lump of dough. And then there's a process that God is transforming you. When you step off with him, he's transformed you. And it's a delicious journey. It's not always easy. But everything that he allows you to go through, the baking, the molding, the Bible says they're all perfect things. Not they're wonderfully comfortable things, but they are things that perfect you to make you into his image. And then at the very end, you fall into that wonderful glaze, that's heaven. And you know, you hear that, well done, good and faithful servant. So I want to encourage you today that God is just waiting. He's not looking for perfection. He's not looking for people who got it all together. He's looking for someone that'll just rise up every day and say, okay, God, I'm ready. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how. I don't know who. I don't know when. But I know this, I'm going to follow you. And I've learned that when we lay aside our agendas and we just go with God, he will take you places you never dreamed of. There's so many times early in my ministry that I was so adamant on doing what I had on my to-do list and how I thought things should go. And we have learned at our events things never go the way we had originally planned, but they're always the way God had planned them. And so when we've learned to let go of the controls and start going with the Spirit, it's just been an amazing, amazing journey. One other thing I really want to focus on is that two things. One, when you move out with God, Satan's not going to be happy. You know, I knew some physical pain before I retired from skiing. You don't play tug of war with a boat for 30 years and your body not hurt. It hurts. It hurts every day I wake up. Okay. Sorry. There's going to be times in your life where things are hard. And like I said, when I was just skiing and doing my own thing, yeah, I was a Christian, but I had not moved out with God. My life was pretty good. You know, I had some physical pain, like I said, because I competed, my hips, my back, neck, different things like that. But it wasn't until I really stepped out with God that I upset Satan a little bit. He didn't like me off the dock. And he has come at me with everything in his arsenal. And he comes against you in your mind with thoughts, negative thoughts, guilty thoughts, shameful thoughts, things that will weigh you down, make you feel like you can't move out with him, with God, make you feel like you're not good enough, that you don't deserve it. He'll come at you with physical things. The Bible says in John 10:10 that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I want to encourage you this morning that no matter what Satan brings you, he likes you to look at everything with your natural eyes. You know, I love, Andrew, is that your name? Oh, it was you. You talked about it first, and then one of the other gentlemen was talking about the doctor's report. But your eyes weren't on the doctor's report. Your eyes are on Christ. And that just really spoke to my spirit, because what happens is Satan's going to send waves in your life, big bumps. But if you're following God, God knows you how to get you over them. And it says in Romans 8:28 that he works all things out for good. All things, even the hard things. Satan wants your eyes on the bumps. When I slalom skied, I had to go around obstacles. And I'm here to tell you, obstacles are made to jump over. I did that. And to ski around. And sometimes the obstacles are big. And the first thing you learn when you're slalom skiing and you're going through the slalom course is not to look at the buoy. Because if you look at the obstacle, you're going to ski straight to it. So my eyes always had to be focused over here, and then as I made my turn, my eyes had to be going across, not at the buoy, or I'd run straight to it. And in life, Satan wants your eyes and your ears focused on everything that's going on in the economy, everything that the doctor's report says. He wants you looking at your checkbook and saying, you know what, I can't do it, I can't afford it. But the Word of God says he's called us to be generous givers. He's called us to touch people's lives. And so Satan wants you to think you can't do things so that your eyes will be on the negative. And God has called us to keep our eyes on him. And when you do that, you keep moving forward. And that's what I think God's kind of formed this message today, but I think what he's saying is for all of us to keep moving forward, no matter where you are, to keep moving forward. And it says in Hebrews 11:37 that Moses was able to keep moving forward through the wilderness because he kept his eyes on the invisible one. And that's one of my favorite verses. When you let your eyes get stuck on all the things that are going on around you, and it's easy to do. And Satan will use even people that love you and that you love to say things to keep you from moving out, to call you to question what's happening. I've got some friends right now back in Florida who are moving. And they have prayed and prayed and prayed about this move. But you know what? Their loved ones there that live near them don't want them to move. And they're coming against it, causing them to doubt, telling them they're making a mistake, and they have spent months and months praying over this. It wasn't just a flippant decision, but that's what happens. God says, stay focused on me and what I've told you to do, and no matter what you see or feel or hear, you keep moving forward. And Exodus 14 is a great example of this. And this is a time when the Israelites, they had left. It had been about a week since they had left Egypt. Remember, Moses led them out. They were going, the Bible says that God did not take them the short route because that would have taken them to the Philistine country. And the Philistines, the Bible says that it would have been such a powerful enemy, God was afraid the Israelites would look back and run back to Egypt. So he didn't lead them the short route. And sometimes God won't lead us the short route. He led them the longer route. And it says in the Bible, in Exodus 14, that it was for His glory. That everything that would happen would be for His glory. And that's what I found out in my ministry. It's always been for His glory. And in my personal life, even the rough stuff, God shows up and it's for His glory. Well, as they traveled, they found themselves stuck at the Red Sea. And all of a sudden it says that they looked up and they saw the Egyptians coming after them. All they saw was the chariots, hundreds and hundreds. I think it said 600 chariots coming at them with the tires, going and splitting up the dirt and thundering on the ground. And they thought, oh my goodness, what's happened? And they looked up, they panicked when they saw, remember they looked with their natural eyes, the Egyptians, and they cried out to the Lord. And then they said to Moses, why did you bring us out here to die? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done? There's a lot of blame. When things start happening in our life, we start panicking, freaking out, and then we start blaming ourselves, God, other people. It says, didn't we tell you this would happen? So now some pride's rising up. And it says, it's better for us to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. But Moses told the people, and here's the key, and here's what I want to encourage you with today. When you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you've moved out with God, and the enemy's coming against you with everything he has, I want you to remember this verse in Exodus 14:13. But Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians, that's the enemy, you see today, you'll never be seen again. For the Lord Himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. See, He wants you to maintain your peace when things get hard and those bumps are coming and the enemy's coming at you and the doctor's reports and all these things. He's saying, stay calm, maintain your peace. Stand still. That's coming to a place where you have this peace. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. There's going to be stuff, there's going to be bumps. The Bible even says, I will lead you through the waters of difficulty. But being able to be patient is because you have this peaceful spirit and you can wait on God and you can trust Him. He's saying, don't panic. Don't start taking things in your own hands. Don't be afraid and stand still. And that's what you have to do when these things start coming at you, is take a minute and go back to truth. Truth is in the Word of God, that He'll never leave you nor forsake you, that He will give you everything that you ever need. And it says, stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Lord will fight for you. And I love in Deuteronomy, I think it's 37, it says that the Lord Himself will personally go before you. And when they finally were getting away from the enemy, I love it. When they stepped out, God caused the chariot's wheels to fall off. God can do anything. He'll always stop that enemy before it overtakes you. For greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. But it says here in verse 15, it says, why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. So you have to have peace. You've got to remain patient in your spirit where you're still, because you know that He is God and you're trusting Him with your situations. And then you move forward, little by little, step by step, knowing that He is going before you and He is making a way where there seems to be no way, and He's going to part that Red Sea for you once you get up and step off the dock. Once you get up. And it says that he had to go, Moses had to go and step out and put his staff forward. He had to do something. And we're not saved because we do stuff, but I have found in my ministry over and over that I have to step out in faith and trust God. And when I take that step, God does His part of providing everything. If Moses had sat on his rear end and said, I'm not going to get up there and do that, I don't know that it would have divided. But Moses rose up again in faith, no matter what was coming at him, and he stood at the edge of that water. And the next time, my pastor was telling me this last weekend, we were talking about this, he said the next time that they came to the sea, they had to start walking out in it. up to their here to here to here. And he said, can you imagine when they're getting up to their neck and they're waiting for God to part those waters again? It didn't happen as soon as they got to the water edge. They had to step on out in the water. And you know what? That's what a journey with Jesus Christ is. Unfortunately, I love water. I'm used to stepping out in it. Sometimes you're in the deep. But I tell you what, when you're out there with Him and you know that it's only Him that is sustaining you. My ministry, at the beginning, it was kind of easy because, you know, God had blessed us with some finances, so I could just stroke a check. And we just did what we needed. I can't do that anymore. With magazines and traveling and ministry teams and motor homes and boats and insurance, if I stroked the checks, I'd be pretty empty within a year. It's just amazing to be able to watch God do what I could never do on my own. Never do. And so this morning I encourage you. You got a call from the Lord. I encourage you to get moving and to trust Him. Little by little, God will make a way. Recently I've been crying out to Him saying, Lord, why do I have to deal with this stuff? I've had some symptoms coming up, and I'm like, Lord, why do I have to deal with this stuff again? When you look at your bank account in our ministry especially, and it's at a certain level, and I'm thinking, why do I have to deal with this again? And I'm sure the Israelites were looking at the Egyptians saying, God, why do I have to deal with this again? The little baby that's got some test, I think it's Lindsay's granddaughter, Ava, why do we have to do this again? And I just love, God led me to Exodus. And it just talked about, I can't find it in here, but, it says, little by little, that God will lead you forward. And He says, I won't always drive out your enemies in a single year. And that's what I've been waiting for God to just drive out all my enemies, all the things that make life so tough. I want that dome over my life where it's just easy. But God says, you know what? I won't always drive out everything at one time. And it says, because the land would become desolate and the wild animals would multiply and threaten you. So they're going into this land, the Israelites, and there were still some enemies there. And they were expecting God just to go in and let's just wipe them all out. And He says no, but He does say, I will drive them out a little at a time until your population has increased enough to take possession of the land. So you can keep moving forward even when things are happening around you, trusting that little by little, God is going to conquer the enemies. Little by little, He's going to give you the victory if you don't quit. A couple weeks ago, I'll close with this story. A couple weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, we had our last In His Wakes event of the year, and there was this young gentleman who was about, he was a little large, trying to ski. He didn't get up the first time. He drank half the lake, and that was enough for him. And so I said, well, let's go back and kneeboard. And he didn't want to do it. And I said, come on, you can do this. And we know how to push the kids because we know if we can push them forward and they experience that victory, that it's going to change their life. And so he tried to kneeboard over and over again, and he couldn't get up. At one point, I had him on the dry land about 50 feet up on the shore, and he would ski on his knees on the kneeboard all the way down the beach, and as soon as he'd hit the water, he would just dive off because he was so afraid. And eventually, probably after 15 tries, he just looked at me and said, ma'am, please let me quit. And I said, you can't quit. You're this close. Just keep getting up and let's try it again. And by this time, people were laughing at him. Kids who had gotten up the first time, these little skinny things, that had popped right up with no effort at all, were just standing around poking fun. And we got them out of the way. And we made a couple of adjustments, and I let him lay on his stomach. And then he fell on that twice. And I said, come on, just give me one more time. And I was just praying. And he got up on the board, and he went all the way around the lake. And we have this picture of him in the boat with both arms like this. He had had victory. He never would have experienced that victory if he had quit. And I knew he needed that. And I think that's your word for today is you're this close. You're this close to victory. God's not looking for people who never fall. He's not looking for people who who never have wrong emotions. Emotions are natural. We just can't let those emotions stop us. He's looking for someone to just get up and say, you know what, God, no matter what, I'm just going to try again. I'm going to trust that you've got all the answers and that you will make a way where there seems to be no way. And in the end, as you're headed for that blaze of glory, that'll be you. And you will know God like Job did in a way that you could never, ever have imagined. And the journey is incredible. So I appreciate your time today, and I thank you, Pastor Mike, for having me this morning.